what are the best formulas and what should people be looking for in a formula?
Yeah. So, I mean, it might almost be easier to start with what should you not have in a formula. Yeah. But it could be, and there are more. I mean, with the infant formula shortage that was occurred during the pandemic, I mean, there are newer formula companies that have come on the market that I haven't looked too much at, but there's one I think it's called Bobby, formula. I think it's called that I've been told by some of my other fellow practitioners is a good one. Now, in terms of what to look for in general, the European formulas like Hip, Holly, Leluca, they're cleaner. They're not allowed to have some of the different emulsifiers and chemicals that are allowed in our infant formula. The FDA actually allows in our infant formula. They can use cleaner nutrients. Now, one thing we don't want in a formula is a sweetener that's not lactose. Now, lactose is the primary fuel for infants, and it's a primary carbohydrate found in breast milk. And a lot of people think if my baby's fussy, they must be lactose intolerant, but evolutionarily,
right, 'cause it's so prevalent with what we advise adults to avoid.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's really important to tie that in. It's such a prominent prebiotic and carbohydrate in the breast milk, so we shouldn't be avoiding it.
Yeah. So you don't want corn solids. I mean, you want lactose in there. You want to choose organic if you can. Glyphosate, as I'm sure your listeners know, as an herbicide, it was actually initially patented as an antimicrobial, so it will preferentially actually kill the beneficial bacteria and allow the growth of abnormal bacteria like Clostridia in your gut. So choosing organic. I would choose powder over the liquid ready to feed. The liquid infant formulas, the liquid ones tend to have emulsifiers. Now, emulsifiers are FDA approved food additives that keep food together. You'll find emulsifiers, mono and diglycerides are one that you might see in the ready to feed infant formulas. And the use of emulsifiers, I mean, you're going to look when the next time you buy ice cream, if you guys are ice cream eaters, just look. I challenged my kids. They wanted ice cream. I said, well, let's look for one that doesn't have these mono and diglycerides in it. And so, it was hard to find one in our local grocery store that didn't have those. And why is that important? Because mono and diglycerides and emulsifiers can directly trigger leaky gut and so aggravate your child's leaky gut. And
just as a quick aside on this, Elisa, there's decently clear data in adults correlating increased emulsification in food products with more inflammatory bowel disease, to some extent, I believe with IBS. So, we have the outcome data too, because one of the things we try to discuss in this podcast is some of these food components look sort of scary, but don't correlate with bad outcomes in humans. And then some do. And so we try to just report on when do we have a good correlation to an unsavory mechanism with poor health, and with emulsifying agents, there certainly is that data.
Yeah, I love that. And I point to, there, it might be the similar paper that we're referring to, but there was one study, it was more of a correlation study, but they looked at countries and different countries, and, the rapid rise of emulsifier use in these countries mirrored the rapid rise in autoimmunity in adult populations. But, if that's happening to the adult gut, I mean, your child's gut is more vulnerable to hits than the adult gut. And so that is something that we want to keep in mind. I mean, it's the same thing.
Great point. I never thought of the liquid. No, that's because I actually recommended my sister one that was liquid because it had other, I think, health merits to it. But the emulsifying agents, for some people, they're definitely a trigger. So that's great to know.
And you just have to look at the labels, because not all of them are going to have that, but they may. And so, that's one thing. The other thing too, if your baby is really, really fussy and you're really suspicious that, dairy, so casein, is a problem. There are some, it's Gerber Soothe. I think it's called Gerber Soothe. Anyhow, has a whey based formula that
Mm.
seems to be better tolerated for those babies who have casein problems.
Right.
More and more formulas, because they are really trying to look at breast milk science and mimic the benefits of breast milk. They're putting in that the HMOs, the 2FL I mentioned. There's one called LNNT, and so those also would be great to have in them. So, but if you need to go on a dairy-free formula, is soy better? I mean, that has its issues too. There are some
Mm.
women who may have access to local breast milk banks to just, if you're nursing and you just need to top off your supply, it may
Right.
be, that you can find a breast milk bank. But unfortunately, banked breast milk, human breast milk, it's quite expensive, and it's not going to be an option for
Yeah,
exclusive
I'd assume
feeding.
so.
Yeah,
Right.
for most. And the other issue there is, while it may have some of the beneficial, HMOs in there, and even probiotics in breast milk. You don't know what diet that mom had, when they were
Sure.
donating milk. And so,
Right.
if your baby is sensitive to casein, to dairy, and this mom just ate a ton of dairy, it just might not work for your child. And so,
Right.
when I really want to assess, does this child have a lot of food allergies, food intolerances, this infant, then it really is moving to a hypoallergenic or an elemental formula like Neocate, which, I mean, they don't taste very good and they're not organic. But even for a brief trial, just to see, is this part of the picture, and then
Right.
you can supplement with extra 2FL for your baby. I think that there's no problem with that. I think that would be very beneficial.